Can you tell us a little bit about what you know about the history of Davidson Academy?
I can tell you a little bit, but I did not start Davidson Academy until 1936 when I was 6 years old. During that time, and I want to go back to a little history, there have been many changes that have been made at Davidson Academy. I'm going on a historical basis. First thing that had been done, Professor Stamps had come here to sing, and he was asked to be principal of a little 3-room Negro school. And that's what it was called, Tullahoma Negro School. And when he got there was a problem because it didn't have anything. And the children, the black children, or Negro children as it was called, did not go to school for 7 months out of the year. And he said that those children could learn just as well as white children, and that he wanted them to go to school 9 months just like white children did. In that time period, they said, the superintendent told them, if you keep the children in school 2 more months, then we will allow you to have a 9-month school. So that's why I want to say change began to happen is when he came to school in 1924. And the parents kept the children in school, and they went to 9 months. But he had a dream for the children. And his dream was that they could be the best that they could be, and that they could learn just like white children. And he wanted opportunities for them. He then set his eye. Children didn't go to school no further than 6th grade at that time. So then he proceeded to go forth to get 8th grade. And upon getting an 8th grade class, he set forth to do accreditation, because in the county of Coffee, there was no black high school. And his eyes were set on getting a high school where children would not have to go to other towns or communities to get a higher education. When he applied for accreditation, he was refused. He was told no. But he didn't give up hope. And one day he was observed teaching algebra. Now, you know, algebra to 8th grade, you know, we didn't get algebra until we got to high school. And this man came in and did an observation of him. And when he did that observation, he went back and Davidson Academy was accredited. And then also the schools in Manchester, the elementary schools, because there was no high school, was accredited. His next goal was to get high school. And that took place in, I believe, 1935. Tullahoma City Schools separated from the county under the leadership of Superintendent Lee. He got a high school and graduated his first class in 1938. But he wasn't satisfied because he was teaching back that far that you can be just what you want to be. And then that's where I come in. I started school at 1936, 2 years before the first high school graduation class. I come in a primer grade. You would think it is, nowadays it would be a kindergarten. But I came in under primer grade. And I completed my elementary education there. My really context with the Professor Stamps, other than being a principal, didn't come till I became in the high school. And that's where my journey really began, because he developed me into being something that was going to help me later on in life. Professor Stamps could not have a secretary because he didn't have enough students. And the Board of Education would not give him a secretary. And he sought me out and asked me to help him in the office. And he set up typing. I had to learn to type. Between him and the late Professor G.W. Hall, I was taught to type. And then I was taught to do office work, which paid off down the road. In doing the office work, I had a commitment. And in that commitment, I had to not tell the other students anything that went on in that office. I typed the tests, but I couldn't type my classes, but I typed tests. Never once did I betray him by telling other children what was on that test. Another time while in that office, about the character of a man, he had a lot of compassion for the children. We had a coach that had come in and introduced basketball to us. And of course we all played, the majority of us played. But then when we didn't have any place to play, we played outdoors on some wooden platforms, and I believe the goal post was a telephone post with a basketball hook on it. And one day he was standing in the office, and he looked out his window, and he saw the children out there in that adverse weather, and his heart melted. He wanted a gym, or he called it a physical education structure. He took a group of us students to WJIG broadcasting station to do a presentation. And my presentation, we had to write our own, was on the need for a physical education building in Tullahoma. And along with the parents, they went before the board, mayor and alderman. And it was after I graduated that a gym was built for the school. And still he wasn't happy, because he wanted a well-structured learning environment for children. He loved music, and he had a girls' chorus, he had a boys' glee club, and he had a mixed chorus. And these students sung all over Tullahoma, at the Rotary Club, at the Lions Club, at the Telephone Company. We sung constantly. We were on the go. We participated in competitions with other schools. But he still wasn't satisfied, because he hadn't reached the goal, because he wanted the best that he could have. But these Negro children, and that's what it was called back in the day. We were called Negro, then we graduated to colored, and then we graduated to black, and now we're African American, and I'm an American. That's it. I'm an American. He took me to the radio station, and I'm going to tell you how that connects up with the future. And I made my presentation about needing a physical education building. And the parents cooperated, and they got it. And then during Camp Forest, Tullahoma was a magnitude of people. There were 70,000 people in Tullahoma. And so the school had to be expanded to accommodate the kids that was coming in. We got a cafeteria, which we didn't have. The original cafeteria was a little place in the library, just big enough for to prepare a meal, and we ate at the tables in the library. But then we had a full cafeteria, and we had bathrooms. You know, you young people don't know anything about going outdoors, but we had to go outdoors, cross the back of the school lot to go to a bathroom, because we had outdoor facilities. We had that. And then with that expansion, he was still unsatisfied. And so, but that experience at the radio station prepared me for something that was coming on down the line. And I'll tell you what it was in a minute. I want to finish this. Finally, after the struggles, the hardships, the pain, the being rejected, we finally had a school that was second only to Tullahoma High School. But it only lasted for a season, because he only worked in that school 2 years when integration set in. The school was carried on 2 more years. He retired in '64. But he worked 2 more years as principal at the school that he had worked so hard to acquire. And they put all the 6th grade classes in that school. He stayed on for 2 more years, and then he left. He had 2 years to enjoy his dream. But he was always moving the students of Davidson Academy. He was always moving you forward. He was building your confidence. He was preparing you for the future. We even had a club that emulated a fraternity and sorority. That club was First Youth Aid Club, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. So that when we went off to college, we would know how to participate in a sorority or a fraternity if we choose to. He built confidence. He gave encouragement, and he was always push, push, push. And to those who accepted that, they went on and made productive citizens in the city of Tullahoma. Now with me, that first experience with a radio station, I never dreamed that I would have my own radio show. And the name of it was the Ebony World. I did it for a little over a year. It was a talk show. And that experience in the radio, hey, prepared me for what was coming on down the line, because I never dreamed of doing anything for radio. And while I was in school, I was about sophomore year, the Tullahoma News wanted a reporter. They wanted a reporter to report news of colored people of Tullahoma. And he chose me and recommended me to Tullahoma News to do this. That was a stepping stone to other things. I did not realize at that time where this was going to lead, but it led me to be confident, to be able to stand on my own 2 feet, to be able to write, and I love writing. I didn't have any experience. The only experience I had was just reading the newspaper. I was given a little book called, it was a book on journalism. I still got the book. It didn't do me any good, but how I learned to write is by reading other people's writing. And I wrote that column for a number of years before I got tired. And I retired from that too. He always built that confidence. And another thing that motivated me, I never wanted to teach. Teaching was not in my plans. I wanted to work in business. But from the time I was in elementary school, I was classroom monitor. And I think maybe you might know what classroom monitor was. Children hated me because I was strict monitor. Whatever the teacher told me to do, if they said put their names down, if they don't misbehave, they went up on the board. But that was preparing me for the future, because I went into teaching and I taught 28 years. I taught the little ones, little preschool. But he built all this confidence and all the opportunities he gave me, or he pushed me to, help me to be where I was today. I'm competent. I don't mind talking. I stand for what I believe in, because he always said, you respect your elders. Well, you know, we were going to respect our elders, because you know what the elders would do to us if we didn't. He also told us to respect one another. He also taught us to respect the property of other people. You didn't write on the walls of Davidson Academy. You didn't throw trash down at Davidson Academy. You didn't walk on that front lawn at Davidson Academy, because we were taught to respect and take care of things. Why do we have to take care of things? Because we were the hand-me-down school. everything that we got at that school. And that built character, because he taught us how to take nothing and you can make something out of it. A lot of the equipment that he used to teach science, he had to make it because he didn't have it. And you didn't have no new books. You got to hand-me-down books from the white school. And I'm sorry John said all that, but I'm sorry to say the books were pissy. To me, they smelled pissy. They were torn. They were written in. But the one thing about character of Professor Stamps and his integrity, when he did get some new books, he would make sure every child got at least one new book. And you know, if you got a new book, you would say, oh, I got a new book, new book. Because sometimes you had to borrow your classmate's book because it had been torn, a page had been torn out of it. Hand-me-down crayon, do you know what we got? Broken crayon from the other schools. And when they played football, you got the torn up football uniforms. Don't make them girls put it back together. So I'm saying we were a hand-me-down school. But in being a hand-me-down school, and this is my terminology, it made us stand tall. And we could face anything that came towards us. We could face it because we had to improvise. And in participating in school, it was a joy for me because I'm participating in everything. Now I'm through.
Now you mentioned the motivation that he provided. In your time being associated with Davidson Academy, there were a lot of social things going on. There were wars, there's civil rights movement, there were a lot of different things happen. Did he ever talk about those or mention
those? Now during my time, I tenure in school, the civil rights movement hadn't began. It was right on the brink, and I never did discuss that with him. Okay. But he said that you can be what you want to be. All you got to do is hit your way with the star. And you asked another question. I'm sorry I didn't hear.
The main point was, did he ever talk about things that were going on outside? You mentioned growing up in segregated town. Did he ever talk about, you know, conducting yourself outside of school or those kind of things? He taught us to conduct ourselves with respect. That you carry yourself respectable at all times. That on Monday morning, if you go, you make sure that you went to work on Monday morning. Do not be late going to work on Monday morning. And the why is because the white man thought that all blacks did on the weekend was party hardy and get drunk. He said if you sick, you make sure you go to work and let them send you home. He was a community-oriented man. He was the president, he was the director of the American Red Cross at one time. And I want to back up there and tell you about segregation, because when kids was going to school and he had a young son, we didn't have Boy Scouts. You didn't have anything like that. And his young son saw a white Boy Scout troop. And he said, Daddy, why can't we have a troop? Professor Stamps organized the first black Boy Scout troop in Tullahoma. It was troop number 158. Now there's a troop now that has that number, but see, I guess once you don't continue, they retire your number and reassign it. He took the group of boys, the first year that he had the scout troop, to a jubilee in Nashville, Tennessee. And they came back home with every first prize on everything except one thing, and it was beans. Whoever was in charge of cooking the beans did not win first place, they won second. And then from there, the boys that was in that troop, two of them went on to become scoutmasters. One of them happened to be John Berry, Steve Berry's daddy, and the other one happened to be my husband, Robert Northcutt.
they became scoutmasters after they grew up. And so he impressed upon these young boys, and they went on to be leaders.
Wow. So can you talk a little bit more about his engagement in the community? You mentioned the Red Cross, you mentioned Boy Scouts, church involvement, other organizations?
He was a member of Mount Zion Baptist Church, where he was choir master. But he wasn't only the choir master at Mount Zion, he was choir master of 2 other churches. So he was over 3 churches. Now, I don't know the name, but I imagine it was maybe Shorter Chapel and maybe the ME Church. It was Church ME. I'm not sure of the other 2 churches. And they would sing. Sometimes they sung with music, sometimes they sung one. His theme songs that he always sung, and that includes in school, was Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, and Steal Away. Now, the boys, we had one, the Whoopin' Poo, I can't think of the name, Whoopin' Poo song. Anyway, Skeeters Are Humming on the Honeysuckle Vine, Sweet Kentucky Bay. That was one of the songs the boys sung. He was working behind the scenes when nobody knew what he was doing. He was going to different people asking for things for his children, because those children that went to Davidson Academy was his pride and joy. And not only that, when the school became a high school, there was a family in Manchester, I believe they were Wootons, that bought a bus. They mortgaged their home and bought a bus and started transporting the children from the county to Davidson Academy to go to school. But he had a lot of compassion for them, because those kids had to get up as early as 4 o'clock in the morning, and some of them had to walk a mile to catch that little bus. And he had compassion for that. Sometimes the old bus would break down and the children didn't get to school till 10 o'clock. But he had compassion for those kids. They were just as important to him as the ones here in Tullahoma. They came from Hillsborough, Pelham, Summitville, Little Hurricane, and Manchester to go to school to get their high school education. Prior to that, if you wanted to get a high school education, you had to go to another community, because there was nothing here. That's why he fought so hard to have that put in.
Can you, since you had kind of an experience with him outside of the classroom as his secretary while you were a student, can you talk a little bit about his interactions with the other teachers? How he led them, what they were like? Were they all similar, different?
Well, you know, everybody is different, but he was in control of his school. And the teachers, they worked together to help the children achieve their potential. Of course, he had to go outside Tullahoma to get teachers for the school system, because there was nobody here. And he brought in, seemed like quality teachers to teach. One young man was an original Tullahoman, and that was Paul Christman. He came in as a coach. They had good rapport. They worked together. They were concerned about seeing that we learned. And if you didn't learn, you didn't do what they do nowadays. No child left behind. If you didn't get it, you're going to repeat the grade. And I think that was a positive thing to do. Because why are you going to send some child on and just pass them through the door? Why are you going to do that and they don't know nothing? Devin, you got kids coming out of school can't read. And you know, I know it, and you know it too, that they are true. But when you came out of Davidson Academy, you read, and you didn't just call words. You read fluently. Miss Stamps was his support. she was always there for Professor Stamp. You know, a good wife is something you can't beat. But my first teacher was Bertha Mae Baker, and would you believe, when the first grade, I was doing a sewing, I was doing paintings, as well as my little learning to read. And the first time when I learned to read, I have never stopped reading, because if a well-read person is a well-learned person. We had the little plays, and now I'm gonna go back to me, because you want me to get on me. Once I got grown, and they had the little plays at school, guess who made the costumes? I made the costumes for the plays that they were having at school. And then later on, see, I took home economics. These girls can't even sew a button. I doubt Tina can sew a button. I'm sorry, Dr. David. But what I'm saying is, and then when I went on to work with the youth at Mount Zion, we had a choir, a children's choir, and I made the robes for them to wear in the choir. So my education at Davidson Academy was one that you can't take away from me, because it prepared me for what was coming on down the line. And I thank God for it.
That's all.
You know.
You mentioned earlier that Professor Stamps came to Tullahoma as a part of a singing group. Did you ever talk to him at all about his experience at Roger Williams College?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
No, I didn't. But I think I told you, Roger Williams College was a black college in Nashville, Tennessee. It was located near where Vanderbilt is today, and I think I showed you a picture of it. And that's where he went to school. But that's not where he completed. He went to Fisk University. No. And I do believe that he also took courses at TSU. And I know his wife took some courses at TSU.
So with that connection to the universities in the Nashville area, did he ever expose you guys to professors or teachers or things like that from Fisk or Roger Williams or TSU or any of those while you were a student? Really only at commencement. Okay. I don't remember him bringing in teachers, you know, like you have career day. Right.
I don't remember him ever doing that. But our speakers always come from one of those schools. And mine was Merrill Epps. Well, I didn't particularly care for his talk, but you know. And I want to push out one more thing. He really cared for people, because there was one year there was only one child in the senior class. His name was Ernest English. He was the only one to graduate. But do you know they had a full graduation baccalaureate, they had baccalaureate sermon, and then they had full graduation for that one student. Now that's caring. That's caring.
Wow. Sorry to jump around here a little bit, but I wanted to go back to kind of fill in. You mentioned Camp Forest. Can you talk about what Camp Forest is and how that, was there a connection between Davidson Academy and Camp Forest?
Well, there wasn't a connection between Davidson Academy except the influx of new children. Okay. It was during World War II. World War II, Tullahoma used to be a National Guard camp, Camp P. I think that's what it was called. But during World War II, Camp Forest was built and established as a training camp for soldiers. Now, the soldiers were segregated. They weren't integrated, they were segregated. And that's the reason down on Jackson Street, right there at the corner of Cook and Jackson, was a USO. It was for black troops, called the black troops. And when that phased out, then it became the city's property. And they made a community center out of it. That was first community center. And guess who was over it? Mrs. Stamps. She was the what you call supervisor. Right. And when she wasn't there, her staff was supervised. And see how things go from one thing to another, how they correlate. There were so many people in Tullahoma, and I'm pretty sure I bet you know, that I think it was 70,000 people in Tullahoma at that time. They built Camp Forest, and they built Northern Field. With all these people coming in to work, that's where the influx of children come in. Every house, every cranny, everything in Tullahoma was packed with people. And the school just,
Wow.
so they added to it. That's how that came about.
You said that by the time the facility, Davidson Academy, the building was complete in terms of the renovations, you only had 2 years after that before integration.
Out of the last renovation, it was only 2 years. Because integration came in 1964.
Right.
And I believe that school renovation took place in 62.
Okay.
He had about 2 years there. And that's I'm not definitive on it.
Okay.
But I'm thinking it was no more than 2 years.
Okay.
The last graduating class from Davidson Academy was 1964. And that was the last one.
Did he talk much about integration? In my research, there was very little mention here in Tullahoma about when the schools would be integrated, how.
Let me tell you about the integration process. Because my children were in school at that time.
Okay.
It happened overnight. It really did. Dr. Evans was superintendent of school at that time. And we get the word that you're going to integration. The children are going to be going to the white schools. And the Davidson Academy will become a school for all 6th grade classes. And he stayed on to those 2 years, and he was out of there. But it just happened. And it was a smooth transition. We, as former students of Davidson Academy, and parents, we were parents at that time, we were very concerned about what was going to happen to our children. And we mothers, we walked all day long. We had told our children, if anything go wrong, you call, and we will be there. And we would have been there for our kids. But it went so smooth. In fact, I think it operated better then than it is now. Wow. I really do. Wow. It was just as smooth as silk. And there wasn't no whole lot of mess. The children went to school, and that was it. I think it's more problems now than it was then.
Wow. But did after it happened, or in the moment when you guys found out, did he ever mention how he felt about it?
Not to me.
Okay.
Not to me.
Okay.
He never discussed the last thing that he said to me was, the times are swiftly changing, and you must be able to change with the times. And I've kept that all my life, since he was getting sick at that time when he said that. He said, you must be able to change the time. That's why we were pushed so hard, so that when these things come, and one other thing he said, you must be prepared when the door opportunity opens to walk through that door. We walked through the door. Now, everybody didn't go to college, but they were productive citizens. They raised their children, they bought homes, and they worked hard. And I'm just saying that this man, in my paragraph, was one of the most dedicated person to a community, to a school, because he gave it all. And he wasn't liked by everybody. And in your interviews, you're going to find those that they're going to say negative things. But they didn't really know what was really going on. And I learned this when I went to Manchester, talking to a former Basil Basil McCahan. He gave me told me some things about Professor Stale that I didn't know. Will, church member, when you don't know something, you need to keep your mouth shut. And that's the way I feel about it. Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you wanted to add or you can think of?
I think I've done enough running my mouth.
Well, I really appreciate it. This has been very, very helpful, especially thinking about a historical figure that, as you mentioned, most people really didn't know well then, and that as that history gets farther from us, fewer and fewer people will know moving forward. But as you mentioned, I think the impact that he had on this community is something that future leaders should be able to look at and hopefully emulate to help make our community better in all areas.
But when they made the Davidson Academy into the community center, here they go again. They named it South Side. Now the Joy Club, which was a black woman organization at that time, women's organization I should say, they went before the board of mayor and told them it was ghettoish and that it should be named after Professor Stam because he had dedicated so many years of his life to the education of young black children in that building. And the board unanimously agreed to name the C.D. Stamps Community Center. And I feel good. I had a little part in that.
That's great.
And now we're getting ready. And thanks to We Care, the We Care Committee, there will be a strip of highway, I believe starting from Coffee Street to the Franklin County line, and it will be known as C.D. Stamps Highway.
Awesome. That
will take place the 8th of August.
Okay. So almost 50 years later.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. And I hope I helped you, and I'm tired.
Yes, ma'am.